welcome to episode 4 of the Cybersecurity webinar series. Welcome back, David.
Hi.
So, in the last episode, we explored the critical world of penetration testing, gaining insights from David as well as information from our security guest expert, Hubert Mikalev. We ventured into the business perspective, understanding the need for penetration testing, and we received some very important technical insights and delved into penetration testing and its tangible outcomes, and showcased live work on a target, revealing how much an attacker can learn about your system with minimal or very little effort.
That's right.
So we are on one of my favorite, so to speak, topics related to web security. Today we're discussing training and the training that companies need to plan and give their staff in terms of cybersecurity. Very few people realize how important it is to make your teams or your personnel very aware of the potential of cybersecurity attacks. I think until something really bad happens, people don't realize the effect of any action they could be taking and erroneous action they could be taking on the company systems. So, what can businesses learn from penetration tests, and how can these help in terms of the kind of training that one can plan and one can make available, whether in person or online, to the employees?
Yes, so exactly what we showed last week, the penetration test will kind of highlight to an organization where their weak spots are. Typically, with a penetration test, they tend to be very technical, but as we explored last week, we mentioned examples like phishing, and there are penetration tests where we focus on success rate. You know, how many people actually clicked on a link, not to go after that person, and hit them over the head, but to get an idea of how aware a company is about phishing per se. So you might have a penetration test whose primary success was due to successful phishing attacks. And then a company knows that, listen, actually, we need training for our employees to know that such things exist, because it's almost never malicious. It's always a slip up on the part of the employee. Converse, so you have that, like a general awareness, what to do with your, but then you also have the other technical side of the spectrum where, listen, our developers are not aware of secure coding practices. So we need training, technical training for our developers on that. And similarly, maybe instead of developers, our sysadmins, they're struggling to kind of use their tools effectively, or they don't even know where to start. So you have a technical training on that. And the penetration test should bring down the gazillion options of training to a concrete set of let's say recommendations, step 1, step 2, step 3 minimum, so that the next penetration test will be a lot more difficult, or it would have a lower chance of success. That's the
So,
whole
to
idea.
put it in simple terms, through a pen test, you're exposing the weakness, you're identifying the security risk, you're improving security awareness, you're meeting regulation as well, the regulation, the regulatory requirements, understanding the business side, the business cyber defense capability. And in practical terms, David, how can employees translate the findings of a pen test into actionable knowledge that enhances their understanding of cybersecurity threats, to see them coming, or at least maybe to be aware of what could possibly lead to an attack?
It's a good question because, for example, a bit of the legislation, I think it's DORA, call it threat intelligence led testing or training. So for example, a pen test might go, give you a report. We found a vulnerability in your Linux system. And then from there, we managed to get a password. So the training over there would be for your sysadmins, your IT. Listen, these are our sources of exploits. So the sysadmins now are learning, where do attackers get their information from? Where should I look so that I get there before they do? Users, so normal practical users, might go, this is the format of what a phishing email looks like. These are the telltale signs that it is a phishing email. A link that has lots of a hyperlink, a web link that has lots of random characters should start raising alarm bells, because a pen test used that and I clicked on it by mistake, but I clicked on it. So it gives practical examples to the mostly theoretical training and that employees would get them.
So in the company, humans are the weakest link. Now, I am quite apprehensive when a new person joins my team, especially from outside of the company, because we are very aware. We give a lot of training, but when someone comes in and he's new to the company, perhaps he in his previous job, he wasn't exposed to the level of training that Go gives. And I am always apprehensive and aware. So could we perhaps share some real-world examples where human errors or lack of awareness have resulted in cybersecurity breaches to make the concept more tangible for our audience?
Yes, so the humans are the weakest link is because there's a million and one ways that things can go wrong. And training is probably one of the best way of covering as many of your bases as you can. There's no technical solution to everything out there. So I agree with you completely. Humans are the weakest link. Now, how to kind of tackle this head on is, first of all, you need to tailor it down to your audience. At least from our end, we hear often, because users are stupid, they don't know what they're doing. No, it's not that they're stupid, it's just because I am not an accountant, and if you show me a spreadsheet full of numbers, I'm going to be lost. I don't consider myself stupid, but in that domain, I am stupid. So the training has to take the audience in it. Is this a technical group? I will deliver it one way. Is this, an attendant, someone behind the cash register? Because it's tailored different. You need to use different terminology. You need to find common language. Otherwise, their awareness is never going to raise. Should be maybe more aware of physical. You shouldn't just let anyone plug in a laptop into the wall socket. They shouldn't just let anyone go behind the counter, that kind of stuff. But a developer probably isn't very interested in those physical security training, and vice versa. There are loads of other topics so that the developer are supposed to pay attention to, but not a cash register attendant. Both of them, it's important that they get security training. Otherwise, yes, you're always the weakest link, just because someone is so unfamiliar with the security domain that they just simply don't know what anything means.
So most customers haven't yet experienced a cyber attack. Talk to us about the systems they have, the firewalls, they have the actual firewalls in their systems. But here you seem to be addressing something that's quite different. It's not just the technology, it's creating a human firewall within the organization. And this, it seems, is very critical in relation to cybersecurity.
It's a very good term, because I think a human firewall, because I think the best firewall there is common sense, which, as we all know, is not so common. But it's not so common simply because you have no experience in it. So you can have the best
let's pick on spam, okay? Something everyone knows, everyone gets spam. So I'm trying to get, again, I'm trying to frame the problem to an audience that can relate. So it's kind of that kind of thinking is what good training is about. So let's look at spam. Recently, till very recently, till last year, a lot of our telltale things to look for in a spam email is bad English. You know, you always joke about someone in Africa and some Nigerian prince writing a very badly worded, grammar incorrect email. If you see anything like that asking you for an invoice, it should raise a red flag. But now it changed because now you have ChatGPT, and even someone in that kind of environment where English is not a primary language, all of a sudden can write a fantastic looking email that will be extremely hard to distinguish if you just rely on language. So that's where the human firewall comes in, because unlike technology, humans can get context. So the common sense comes, this guy never asked me for that amount of money before, or what order is this guy talking about? Let me just talk to Joe in shipping, really quickly. Let me just send him a message. These kind of things technology can't do on their own because they lack context. Though with AI we're kind of getting there, it's still far away. Like the human brain is very good with relationships, human to human relationships. So there is this kind of one up that when you train people to work together for an effective security policy, they tend to outperform, even at a low level, they tend to outperform any technology you have there. The technology is there to make the human lives easier, like you shouldn't have 1,000 spam messages. You should maybe have 5 because the obvious ones are filtered out. But those 5 are probably where the only thing that will save you is the human firewall. I like that term.
So, could you delve into specific scenarios or methods that we can use to train people? Practical scenarios, like for instance, how effective are simulated scenarios like phishing simulation, secure coding practices, and incident response drills?
From those 3 you mentioned, my top 2 picks are definitely the phishing simulations and the incident response drills. But I'll explain why. First of all, phishing has been, still is, probably will keep on being one of the primary avenues for successful attacks. And again, now with generative AI, it's become even, maybe probably even more of a problem than it was before. And the phishing simulations are, number one, easy to carry out. So there are good services out there, even from CyberSift, where they're relatively easy to set up. So, i.e., they're not that expensive. It's easy to track who clicked on what, and it gives you very definitive, Elaine clicked on a phishing link, but David didn't, or David clicked on a link and Elaine didn't. And, like Elaine clicked on a message that had this team, David clicked on a message that had that team. So, training wise, what to focus on. So I can give you a practical example. When we are conducting phishing simulations, again, we tailor it to we don't do generic phishing simulations. So DHL pickups, you've probably seen these kind of phishing. We tend to tailor them to our audience again. For example, if it's a bank, we'll try send a phishing email. Have you seen this Malta Central Bank notice? And you try to get them, if it's a law thing, can you give me information about this new law? So that is highly effective in my opinion. Incident response drills are also easy to simulate, and they give you really good indications of where your risk lies without harming your organization much. Phishing can harm your organization. Secure coding practices and others like it, you should do this, you should do that, is very difficult because it's very theoretical, and you need to, if you want it to be effective, you need to tailor it to your audience, and tailoring it for your audience is very difficult because code changes all the time. Customer A might be different from customer B, so it's a lot more expensive because it's difficult to prepare, and things change very quickly. So the trailing shelf life is not very long. So definitely specific scenarios and methods that I would say are everything should be tailor-made because you are different than customer B. And start from the major avenues of attack, which are phishing, for example. It doesn't have to be technical at all. So for example, an incident response drill might just be, how should my marketing or C-level executives react if I do get hit by a cybersecurity attack? Nothing technical about it, completely PR, but very important from a legal point of view. Even from an attacker's point of view, you just see how much chaos you can produce and then carry out another attack within that chaos. So these kind of incident response drills, I agree, is a really good place to start.
What kind of cybersecurity training courses does CyberSift offer? How can these courses contribute to enhancing employees' cybersecurity awareness and skills?
So we offer quite a range, but we typically, if I'm being honest, we typically step in whenever there is, again, a need for it to be tailored. I keep on saying tailored because any listener out there who maybe goes online and looks for phishing simulations will find good services out there that are SaaS, they're software as a service, and they tend to be a bit generic, which is great because at a first level you have something very cheap, very easy, where you can set up a phishing simulation, or you can get a generic training course and your users go through it, and at least the obvious cracks in the wall are filled in. But then when we come in, it's like more where the customer says, fine, we went through the basic training, we ticked the box in ISO, but we're still getting hit by phishing attacks, and users still click on it, or our developers still always get caught flat-footed by some vulnerability. Can you come in, see what we're doing, run an exercise, do a pen test, figure out where our risks as an organization lie, and then come up with a curriculum or a training that addresses those issues particularly for us. So for example, when we do training, one of the first things I do is let's come up with a curriculum. And this is the most difficult part because even though we can draw from previous experience, every customer has a different setup, whether technical or organizational, which is another big influence, or financial, how much they can spend. So practical ones, we cover the whole spectrum. Procedures, our CEO, for example, is GISA certified, so we have regulatory procedures, guidelines, that kind of training. Then we do technical training in terms of to end users, phishing, this and that. But then we also do technical training in terms of you go to an IT department and you tell them best practices for setting up your particular firewall, for setting up your particular environment, that sort of thing. So we covered the whole gamut of training, but the key point is that we try as much as possible to tailor it to you. And for that, we ask for penetration tests. Where are your pain points? What were successful attacks, if any, in the past, so that we know where your pain points lie and give specific training to address that.
It's quite challenging actually, because we're talking about an ongoing process. Because it seems that in cyber attacks, things seem to be evolving on a daily basis. So the challenge as well lies in the fact that in an organization, especially within a large organization or a small medium enterprise, you have a cross-section of staff with different educational backgrounds. So, I mean, people who are in IT are very IT savvy. Then you have people in the finance department who may not be as IT savvy. I mean, they use their computer on a daily basis to do their work. But then when it comes to certain specific terms and also when they are exposed to attacks, they are. You could have the CFO in a company and he doesn't realize he's under attack. And probably the attack that he's under is one that could cost the company a lot of money. So how can an organization ensure that staff training becomes part of the cybersecurity strategy of the company and part of the training program of a company and not just a one-time event? Because I mean, I come across clients whose training program is not as extensive as, for example, what I give in Go Business. My training is ongoing for various reasons on different subjects. I see myself as like a little training organization. But there are companies whose budget on training is limited because of their size, because obviously of cost constraints. So how do you keep it going?
Yes, that's probably the most challenging bit of it all. It's definitely ongoing in the sense that let's pick on AI. I was just picking on it before. It's a very new threat, and even security researchers themselves are figuring out what it is capable of and what isn't capable of. So, has any of your training to do with phishing? That's the most obvious use case I can think of right now. Has it mentioned it, you know, that like, listen, AI is now something that's going to make the quality of phishing emails better. So what else can you look for? You know, so that this is a very practical example of it being ongoing. Current events also have a bearing on the cybersecurity training. The war, inflation, whatever it is, these are all very hot topics for someone who's sending a phishing email, for example. Then if you want to take it technically, let's go super technical now, not just for the lay person. Which vulnerabilities affect you? Did you know that there was a vulnerability XYZ on your vendor? You know, how are you keeping up to date with the vulnerabilities that affect the equipment that you are using? I'll give you a practical example, which is very popular in Malta. AnyDesk. AnyDesk is one of these remote access programs where my computer is broken. Don't worry. The next AnyDesk, and I can see your screen, and then you magically see the mouse moving across your screen. They had a breach. You know, their code signing certificates were stolen. You know, but do you use AnyDesk? First of all, do you know that you use AnyDesk? If you know that you're using AnyDesk, is your training mentioning that, listen, they recently had a breach? Maybe what are the best practices for AnyDesk? You know, so training is always fed by these current events. So that's number one, why it's always an ever-evolving process. And even with budgetary constraints, it's not that expensive to whatever pay for that 1 hour where you're sitting down with the trainer, the lecturer, and going like, listen, this is our setup, you know, this is what changed. Maybe you introduced a new vendor. Maybe you went Microsoft instead of AnyDesk, whatever. Maybe you got a new program. Maybe you hired a new developer. You always highlight to each other current events that might affect your or changes that might affect your organization, so that the training is, you get a better bang for your buck. Better bang for your buck. That's the whole idea over here. So that little bit extra maybe that you pay for tailor-made solutions would probably go a much longer way than you just getting a cookie cutter lecture, forcing people to sit through it, and then it doesn't quite apply to you.
So the importance of training in terms of cybersecurity can never be underestimated by any company. I mean, our employees need to be aware of the threats out there, need to make sure that they can protect themselves, and also perhaps in terms of customers, their own customers. I can see as well that banks have started to do a bit of training on their own websites in terms of cybersecurity. In terms of the ongoing training that one needs to provide, would you suggest that one goes for in-person, online training? There's a whole mix out there in the market, and it's very easy to try and pick and choose from online training. But since you said that you like to look into the organization, it's important to do a pen test and then to try and create a training program that is really, really for that particular organization at hand. How could we really, really teach? Because I mean, training, there's a theory, the theoretical part of the training, but in terms of the practical, when something is about to happen, or when you're on your laptop and you receive a phishing email, how in my mind, I am always aware and averse to what can happen, but sometimes you're looking at 20, 30 emails at the end of the day, and you don't realize that something is not quite right. I mean, I've had an incident myself where I was asked to change the account where my salary goes, and I almost thought, okay, HR are asking for a change to my account number, but how do they know that I have another account number? And then suddenly I realized that the email address was not really coming from our department, but I could have easily pressed on that button and taken action. 6:00 in the evening, I was like, it was after a day of meetings, a day of emails, really tired, and you just don't realize, and you go for it. Today, probably because I'm very aware, I wouldn't do it, but not everybody has this level of awareness, and this is something that companies should be concerned about.
Yes, I agree 100%. It is unfortunately coming to the stage where ignorance is not a defense, because bad guys don't really care that you don't know, that HR would never ask you for that information, maybe over a secure channel, which is why you're seeing things like bank. My favorite is Revolut right now. They're doing the same. And the wording is very emphatic. We will never ask you to provide personal data online, or our representatives will never ask you for this code. Please do not, when you get the two-factor code. That is very good language. It's a bit of a pain for them to implement, because maybe back in the olden days, it was so easy. Can you give me your password? You log in and you'll be able to see what your user is experiencing. Those days are gone now, but for very good reason, because of exactly what you are talking about. If in the back of your brain, something at 6:00, something goes off, like, but man, they should never ask me for this stuff. That's already a win in terms of training, in terms of awareness, and there is a direct impact for a customer, either like you just pointed out personally, or for your company, because you click on a link and all of a sudden it's your PC that was the foothold within possibly very secure organization otherwise. So it is something that I would say, if you don't have anything else, start from your human firewall, to keep the term. It's fantastic. So yes, it's something you should do regularly. Budget-wise, it's probably the cheapest thing you can do, or the most, not cheapest, but let's say the most worthwhile thing that you can do. It gives you the most bang for your buck, in my honest opinion.
Thank you, David. So let's all think about the training needs our organizations need. It shouldn't cost a bomb, but it's very necessary and very important. Next week, we shall be discussing a very, very interesting topic, which is AI in cybersecurity, with guest speaker from the University of Malta, Professor Matthew Montebello. Thank you, David. We look forward to the next episode.
My pleasure, and me too.